All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time out of your midday to listen to us run our mouths one more time about hip hop. You know what day, you know what time, you know you're listening to Saturday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, the almighty, the world famous Gemix. Coming at you live and direct right here on scratchvision.com. I'm Richie Taylor, by the way.
Some more swagger.
DJ Soyo.
So
Yes, yes. And we are joined. Thank you all for as long as you've been rocking with us. Without you all, there'll be no us. Please give the rest of the Scratch Vision family that's going to come after us the same attention. Now, we have a very, very special guest. We always say that for every guest because every guest of ours is special. You know what I'm saying? We don't have anybody on that we don't rock with. We don't have anybody on that we don't appreciate, or respect. This is one more of our unique guests. This is going to be a wide range, a wide ranging conversation. We are joined by Dr. Ansel Augustine, aka the Holy Hot Boy,
Yes.
aka Preach, who has some interesting ties to hip hop, to New Orleans, and to the faith of Christ.
Mhm.
Dr. Ansel, man, we are so very, very happy and lucky that you decided to rock with us on today, man. Thank you for taking the time out to just impart some words on us, man.
Amen. I'm honored to be invited, man. We family now, especially now that I live up here in the area.
right, right.
But I'm be calling y'all when it gets cold because I don't know what to do with that.
Um, Man, let's go ahead and jump right into it. As I mentioned before, you have some ties to New Orleans. You're from New Orleans.
Mhm.
Um, you should be on the radio,
Mhm.
correct? And you did work with Cash Money.
Yeah, so about 95 until 99, I worked at a radio station, local hip hop radio station, Q93. And during that time period, there were all these people hanging out in the studio that I thought worked there, but ended up they were just with the record labels. And so eventually I started hanging with them. And so me and Manny Fresh became friends. He's the one that named me two things, Big Chief Toilet Paper, because he saw me doing everything in the studio from running the boards, doing the street team, making the coffee, making the copies and the coffee and all those things. So he's like, man, you that Big Chief Toilet Paper, right? And that's how that came about. And then he also, when he realized my faith trajectory in regards to just being very spiritual, he also named me, oh man, you the holy hot boy, right? And that's how all that came about.
That's funny.
I like that. I like that.
So for those that don't know, what
Mhm.
what what does the hot boy mean? What does the hot boy signify?
All right. Well, what does Juvie say? You a paper chaser. You got your black on fire, remain in the
Mhm.
G until the moment you expire. It's just all those things. So in New Orleans moniker, it's just someone that handled their business, in whatever way that comes about, and so my website, holyhotboy.info, I do all this ministry stuff. And I handle my business in a way that gives, God glory, but also represents his people. I'm not above the people. I serve the people. Yes, I have a doctorate. Yes, I have all these whatever accolades, Emmy nominations, book, deals, all that stuff. That doesn't make me better. In fact, I'm probably more at home with the people in the streets, the people I minister with in the prisons. They give me my uplift and my energy to keep doing what I need to do for the community. And so for me, that's what a hot boy is. It's not above anybody, but you're with the people and doing what you need to do for the people.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Right.
You said something interesting on the No Die show for interview. And shout out to the host. I forgot his name. When it comes to what is a hip hop,
Mhm.
everybody has their idea. Coastal ideals. Production sounds. Whether you boom bap, you G funk, or what have you. But most of those are production sounds, not necessarily definitive hip hop. It's just a sounds of hip hop, but from these different cultures. I mean, from these different regions around the map. What is your definition? Well,
Mm.
what is hip hop to you?
Well, what is hip hop to me, brother? I think of hip hop speaking for a generation. So, I grew up, like I said, New Orleans, we had the bounce scene, before it became popular like it is now. We had, have this right here, Soldier Slim, all
Peace, Soldier
them,
Slim.
you know what I'm saying? R.I.P. And it was, gutter, but it spoke about the realities of New Orleans, Louisiana being the poorest state, Louisiana being #1 for mass incarceration. At that time period, the 90s, the 80s and 90s when I was growing up, NOPD was one of the most, if not the most corrupt police department in the country. They were putting hits out on each other. You understand what I'm saying? You can Google that. And so that's what we grew up in, yeah, bro, it's bad. But the fact, so, these are the people that are supposed to protect us, and, there was that lack of trust, that lack of stability, the lack of opportunities. And so, as we said, people are out there getting how they live. You understand what I'm saying? And so for me, hip hop spoke, it was a voice of the generation. You know what I'm saying? People can talk all they want about what the negative aspects are and all these things that are there. But at that time, before it became watered down, commercialized, all the things you see now, it spoke for the generation. And so for me, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, as we go on, when we talk about Congo Square, when we talk about my culture, the Black masking Mardi Gras Indians, everything is a form of resistance, meaning just as we talk about people on the peripheries that don't have a voice or ignored or, thrown away culture, as them, as many of our people are from our communities are treated, especially now, but also back then. Hip hop spoke for that, was the voice for that generation and gave us a voice for our ills and our problems. And even though people thought it was controversial, even though people thought that it was a problem, it put in their face the realities of what we dealt with every day in the projects, what we dealt with every day in the communities, what we dealt with every day of, you can throw us away, you can ignore us, but we're going to be in your face and let you know what we need for our people.
I love that. I love that you said that because I've said this many times. I'm actually Mexican. I grew up in El Paso, Texas, the border. And I always tell the story of how I got, I heard Paid in Full. I didn't know English yet, or I was still learning English. And hip hop was just, it changed me completely. Like my life changed because of hip hop, no question. And so for you to say that is so real. And as I grown older, met more people, decided to become a DJ, I met more and more people who felt what you just said. In addition, and I want to say thank you to you because there are a lot of people in the trenches, just like you, that keep hip hop going. And for a lot of people, maybe the younger, they don't quite see hip hop the way we see hip hop or feel as strongly about it. But for me, that is I appreciate it because I know that the way people feel about hip hop, the way people can promote whatever they're into, because you can make it whatever you want because it's you. You love hip hop, you do it. And so that's how it keeps going. That's why it keeps growing. Some of it, like you said, watered down, may not be what we thought, but it's still some kind of form of resistance somewhere in the world because of hip hop. And you're part of that. So first, I want to thank you, but I really appreciate that answer because a lot of people don't realize the reason why hip hop means so much to us. And so I really appreciate people like you who keep it going. And you said, like in the trenches,
Oh, appreciate that. I appreciate that.
We've spoken about how hip hop's being used around the world as a soundtrack of resistance. Because of it being used as a resistance tool in Russia, it's outlawed, right? North Korea is outlawed. I think we did a story about what China was trying to, as best as they could, to outlaw hip hop because rather than make the party and BS and music that is pretty prevalent now or the beginning of hip hop. These other countries are using it primarily as their tool to, go against
combat pressure.
Yeah, so that's definitely true. So for you, and I ask this question every time we have a guest. I always ask this. While you were experiencing when you first got involved with hip hop, whatever, for whatever reason, or you heard your first song, whatever it may be. At that time, did you feel that you you were part of something special, or did you realize it later that, like, looking back, like, man, I was part of something, you know, or as you were going, did you were like, hey, this is where it's at?
Yeah. Well, I think to express that, you got to understand New Orleans. New Orleans, Black culture, New Orleans, music culture. And I shared this before with Breezy. We talked. Is Congo Square is probably one of the most sacred Black spaces in the country.
Mm.
Congo Square is in my neighborhood in New Orleans, Treme, which is the oldest Black neighborhood. And to understand that story, you got to understand New Orleans. So slavery was slavery. You know, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was an evil institution in no way, shape. But it was different in New Orleans in the way that Sundays, no one was supposed to work because of the Black code, the Code Noir that dictated the lives of people of color in that area. So when the slave owners would go to the French Quarter to party, our enslaved ancestors, free people of color, the indigenous, and white people that wanted to come would gather in Congo Square, the area right outside the French Quarter. So let's say we were all family and we were separated on different plantations. We knew on Sundays we were coming back together. But so it was a time of celebration. That's why you hear the second lines on Sundays. The Indians during Indian season, which is usually holiday Thanksgiving time until Mardi Gras Day. You know, Sundays we're doing our Indian practices that go back to the 1600s.
Wow.
This spirit of resistance, and so in that space in New Orleans was the only place in America where enslaved ancestors could openly drum without persecution, right? So when we look about that drum beat, we think about the Caribbean influence. We think about that West African, East African, you know, whatever influence that happened in Congo Square during that time period. Brass instruments coming, that's where jazz comes. Then you hear this sound of whatever it is. You know, one of the big sounds we hear out of New Orleans is bambula, that drum beat, right? And you hear that going up and down the Mississippi and spreading to different places as the diaspora and the movement continues, right? And I share that because when you look at how did I feel? I feel when I see on Mardi Gras Day or when I see the Indians and the drumming I do with our tribes, you know, I see that as an extension. And so when I look at hip hop music, right, the beat is the beat that catches you first, right? And then you start hearing the lyrics, right? I feel an extension of that, you know, and that's why on when I was younger, I ain't gonna say the girl's name. Saturday night, I used to try to get to her house so I could watch Yo MTV Raps, right? You know, because it wasn't on anywhere else at that time, you know, until I got into like high school and then BET started, existing and but either way. But it was just that I had to be part of that. And that's why when I had the opportunity to start working in radio and doing that stuff, I felt that that was my connection, right? Not knowing, the ministry call and all that stuff, it is what it is. But even still, um, you in my car, you're gonna hear gospel music, and then it might turn into Ice Cube, then it might turn into some of the Mardi Gras Indian songs, then it might turn into, the Hot Boys, then it might turn into D1, then it might turn into, whatever. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, all that are part of the essence of who I am, right? And and I think that's what's important. Hip hop, it doesn't just define me, but it helped define part of me, and I think it's part of me, and it's a part of a lot of people, hence the resistance, when I don't have the words or don't have the energy, sometimes that song will speak it, and I think that's the power of music in general, but especially hip hop, it's that voice that I didn't have at that time.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you for that.
No problem, yo.
Now, you mentioned Congo Square.
Right.
Paint a picture of an average Sunday night for those that aren't there.
Right now, I'm a board member for the Congo Square Preservation Society. We still every Sunday at 3 p.m. you can go to Congo Square and the drum circle still exists that happened hundreds of years ago, right?
Wow.
People from all different cultures come to this sacred space. There's the ancestor tree, the tree of life. It has different names that have been there since during that time period, right? It's a place of where some of the original civil rights resistance started. In fact, the indigenous that would gather there, they saw the oppression because they were pushed off their land, right, by colonization. And they saw the oppression that the enslaved ancestors were going through. And so they made alliances. And so out of those alliances, they would take them in and protect them, make them part of the tribe, or they would show them how to navigate the bayous to get to freedom. And that's where the Mardi Gras Indian culture comes from. where we make these suits, that take a year to make. This is me in the one suit I made for myself, right? These are all individual beads. That's why it takes a year to make these things, right? Bead by bead. So the feathers and the headdresses are owed to the indigenous. The beadwork and the drumming, I don't have my drum in here, are African. So it's a combination of both cultures. So during the time of segregation, we couldn't go to the parades. Parades weren't for us, right? But the parades in the black neighborhoods were the Indians, another black masking group called the baby dolls, and then the skeletons. And the Indians and the skeletons have vestiges in the Caribbean and Africa. So they're part of the diaspora, right? And so when we look at that Congo Square, painting that picture, it was a time of being free. It was a time of being joyful. It was a time of being fully our authentic selves that was oppressed or repressed during the rest of the week. And that was a time for us to even build a whole new culture, that gumbo that we talk about, where the West Africans, the East Africans, the Caribbean, the indigenous came together. They were their individual authentic selves, but when they came together, they created something new. Hence what we call the Creole culture of New Orleans, right? And that's why still to this day, there's a second line season that happens on Sundays, which originates out of Congo Square. Like I said, all these things that are there, the Indians and just other things, but it was also the place where you have the first documented civil rights movements. This is where people started talking about how do we address these ills that are going on, and this is not right, and what do we do to fight it, and so you could say some of the originations of the resistance that we see now in hip hop came and not originated, but started and continued through those experiences. So Congo Square is a very sacred space. And if you ever go to New Orleans, go there. If you want to learn more about it, they got tours and all kind of stuff with folks that understand it and respect it. But also, even there's a special place there that I want to shout out, a museum I volunteer at when I go home. It's called Back Street Cultural Museum, which is right a couple of blocks away from Congo Square. But it talks about all these cultural things that I've been mentioning right now.
Oh, well, that's amazing. That is an amazing. You bring it to life the way you describe it, and I appreciate it. But it's everything that I love, like it, and to see that connection from that, and it continued and tie it into hip hop is like. And that's why we do this shit.
Right. And there are festivals.
I didn't mean to cuss my bad.
Yeah. And there are festivals and other events that happen there throughout the year, that tie into the sacredness of that space. So you'll have hip hop artists, you'll have reggae festivals, you'll have all these things that you can see the connection to that space, especially when the drummers come for that 3 p.m. Central Time drum circle.
That's cool. On Sundays, Malcolm X Park, they have drummers here.
I heard.
I think you would enjoy that if, I don't know if it's at that level, I can compare, and I haven't been, but it's definitely a good time. And it's very, very, like you say, it's connecting. Just, you could sit there and just meditate and enjoy or meet people. It's just a really cool experience. So that's kind of what came to mind when you were describing it, something along those lines.
Amen.
So, I'm definitely going to make it a point to go to New Orleans and experience that.
Man, well, email me and I'll tell you the real places to go get some good food too,
All right, with that.
Right? Well, it's funny that you mentioned food. I mentioned to you, my family right down the street, hour and a half, 2 hours down Mobile.
Yeah.
I do have family in Houston. So, along that stretch of I-10, I have family there. And I always tell people this. I'm from Denver, but every summer, every other Christmas, we driving to Mobile. We didn't fly.
Wow.
Right? So we drove to Mobile. The halfway point was Wichita Falls, Texas. But we always came through New Orleans and came through Mississippi to get some Alabama. In my opinion, New Orleans, Louisiana, but New Orleans, for the most part, is probably the most unique city in the country. Even large cities, you could say, there are similarities.
Mm-hmm.
To a lot of outsiders, people would think like, northern part of New Jersey and New York are the same. Well, they're not. But there are people just think there are certain cities are pretty similar.
Okay.
New Orleans, even the Popeyes.
Yeah, yes. Preach. Preach on that, brother. Come on. Come on.
Like even, I mean, Mississippi, but no, even the Popeyes in New Orleans just hits different.
I went Popeyes. Lafayette to New Orleans is my Popeyes radius, but go ahead.
Yeah. And you know, when we would come in, we would always stop at Popeyes, either New Orleans or Biloxi. I also lived in the Atlanta area. If you drive 45 minutes, you're still in the Atlanta metropolitan area, depending on where you are. You drive 45 minutes from New Orleans, it's completely different.
Mhm.
New Orleans is definitely its own planet. Like New Orleans is not a real place.
Well, they say, you know, and we said this back home, we're the most African city in the country, right? And if you talk to New Orleanians, we don't even consider ourselves part of America, even though we are, you know, legally. We consider ourselves even more so the northernmost point of the Caribbean in the way we talk, the way we act, in the way we believe. And that's why if I had my one wish, if all of a sudden, you know, to my Dragon Ball fans, if I collected all the Dragon Balls and the dragon came and gave me one of those three wishes, my wish would be to live and have pre-Katrina New Orleans exist once again. It was a special place. It was a special place. You know, after the storm, we lost a lot. I lost people, but more importantly, I lost my culture, my home. You know, and everything became gentrified, watered down. And you know, it was the fight, and I think that's what really opened the door for me to consider moving, even though I moved to New York for that 1 year, you know, worked at St. John's University, came home, and I did some contract work back and forth up here during the pandemic. But what really broke me the past 3 years was seeing how the people you fought for were selling out too because they were so desperate, right? You know, lack of resources, but out of towners could come in and get all this grant money and do stuff. And whereas people like myself and other culture bearers and advocates were in the streets with the people, right? Doing stuff like they're not calling the nonprofit from you know, Philly. I'm just picking the city. You know, and people that don't look like us that came there to help them, even though they're the ones that got the money, they're calling a doc or a Noonie or a, you know, whoever. I need help with my rent. I need this. And we're the ones having to help find, you know, whatever. My son is in jail. Can you help? You know, whatever. And those are the realities. So it just broke me when those people that we were working with or working for were turning into the people we were fighting against. And that hurt. You know, I would never fight my people. I can't. You know, I'm conditioned in a way that, you know, that's why I didn't get any big jobs. You know, that's why politicians or other folks wouldn't put me on certain things because I'm not trying to be an image person. I'm trying to actually be real with the people. For me, at the end of the day, the way my faith is and the way I was raised, if I'm trying to really get to heaven, it's how I treat God's least of his people, right? And that's not to get too preachy on y'all, but for me, I really do try to live that out. And there's certain people in the church, in politics, that don't like that. You know, they like to pretend. You know what I'm saying? And I ain't that image person at the end of the day.
We know we're not even gonna start on that.
I hear you.
But we appreciate you giving that insight.
Yeah,
it's always necessary.
And I think that's also why, if I could tell a real quick story, why me and certain artists are so close, because they know I'm that person. If I come to something, I'm not trying to be seen, but they'll pull me out to do certain things, to pray or do whatever. My first, I think, month and a half, I was here like 2 months. You know, one of the Indian tribes came up here. We ended up performing at the Library of Congress for Juneteenth, right? They asked me to be on stage with them, right? But in the middle of it, they asked me to pray. I didn't know all this was being recorded or what's the archive? Yeah, so it's all in there. But one of the most memorable ministry type moments that ties into hip hop was this. Manny Fresh 50th birthday party. I got the picture right here. I'll show it when it's time. Surprise party at the Fillmore in New Orleans. So, you know, I went with his family to help set up and do whatever, you know, because that's my big brother. You know, I want him to be, you know, surprised or whatever. He came in, music execs, all these people from around the world were there. You know, it was cool, right? You know, they partying, Manny just being Manny and having a good time, right? When it was time to cut the cake, we went to the VIP part of the Fillmore, and we sitting there, and you can't tell, but I'm not the tallest brother, right? And so, you know, I was just like, all right, let them do their thing. I was tired from being there earlier, and so I just leaned back by the ball. I'm back there, and, you know, being the short person I am, looking through the holes of the people, the gaps, so you see what's going on, right? And I see people talking, my cousin D1, other rappers, other, people just sharing their stuff about Manny, right? And then it was time to cut the cake. And he was like, hey, where's Preach at? Right? And I'm, in the back minding my business. So I'm thinking he talking about his wife who works in ministry, or talking about his wife's pastor, whoever it might be. I wasn't thinking it was me. And he kept asking. And then my boy Brandon, who does the spray paint cans and has an art gallery at home, Studio BE. If you go to New Orleans, check that out. He looked down at me because he's tall. He's like, hey, Ansel, I think he's talking about you. I was like, no, he's not. So I make my way through the crowd and I look at the corner, and then Manny like, hey, Preach, come pray over me, right? And so you have all these people with their phones, out Facebook Live and Instagram Live and whatever, and it was just a moment for me to pray for my big brother during that time. And this is the picture someone took of us at the 50th birthday party with me praying. And then after that moment, I went and sat on the couch, as they're cutting the cake and doing whatever. And then it turned into this same thing happens to me when I'm at the gym, back home at least, not here yet. All these one by one, different musicians, different execs came to me, hey man, can I talk to you? And it turned into like this moment of me counseling spiritually or doing whatever. But to me, that's also what the power of true and authentic hip hop is, when I'm in my lowest point, sometimes, Rakim, I ain't no joke comes on, and I'm like, all right, come on, preach. You know what I'm saying? Now today, my people, Kendrick Lamar, Lecrae D1, all them people, Toby, Nguigwe, I hope I'm saying his name right, and I apologize if I'm not. But those are the people that like speak to me. You understand? And I feel like, for me, I'm saying God, to other people, their spiritual connections. It's a spiritual thing when it's true and authentic. And I think that's what all this thing is about. There's that connection that we all have. Hence why when Breezy met me, at that event the day before the event, that we had that connection. I think you had on a DJ Screw shirt.
And you know what? And I'm gonna tell you how I knew you knew when you asked me, where did I get your shirt from, and not who was that? I said, okay, you know who Screw is.
Yeah. Right. And because when I was evacuated in Houston, Katrina, I went to the screw shop, right? And I was listening to all this slow music that, some of my frat brothers from Houston that went to came to New Orleans were playing. I'm like, man, what is that? And the next thing I know, I got hooked on it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just that connection. You understand? We could be different parts, different places and spaces, but music, but especially hip hop music, there's a connection we have.
That's cool.
So, Sawyer's Mexican, Smart and I, we're African American, we're from different parts, the country. We are best friends, but we were brought together by hip hop.
Yeah.
Right. Another testament to the power of hip hop. Hip hop can bring two different religions together to agree on something. D1, I don't know how, met up with Benny Siegel. So you have this, Sunni Muslim and D1. And he is congratulating him, telling him, do your thing, keep speaking truth to power, keep hurting these cats' feelings out here. And I thought that was powerful. It was no, well, I'm this or I'm that. It's you're giving a message that needs to be heard.
That's it.
No, it's real. For me, back home, I'm raised Catholic, Christian, but yet in the streets out at home, we had to call ourselves the Peacekeepers at night because New Orleans being the #1 murder capital of the world at the time after the pandemic. Several of us were out in the streets trying to squash beef. We had a hotline, billboard, family members or community people would call, and we would go wherever there was an issue. But it was me and the Nation of Islam, my brothers that were out there, Brother Willie Muhammad, right? And he's a hip hop head too, right? And so many times whenever the community stuff happens, whether it's a prayer service that needs to happen for someone that was killed or an event at Studio B, at Kwanzaa or whatever, we're the people they call, to present or just be, we're the people in the community that do that. But we always, are always the ones talking about music and our connection to I mean, faith and spirituality. But I think the thing that you said about, Beanie Siegel and my cousin D1 is the fact that in spirituality, no matter the spirituality, we talk about the common good. meaning we're supposed to create a better society. And I think that's the connection that was there. That's the connection me and Brother Willie Muhammad have. That's the connection that me and so many other ministers of different faiths have, is we're trying to create a better space for our community that live out the faith that as it's supposed to be, as the community wants it to be. And that's why we resonate with the community, just being real and living out those things to try to make the world a better place. And true hip hop does that. True hip hop does that.
There you go.
You know, Public Enemy did that. Ice Cube did that when he was speaking the truth to power, right? You know, all those people, you know what I'm saying? When we look at those greats that are out there, you know, why did they make us move? It was more than the beat. It was what they said. You know, as the Bible says, power of life and death is in the tongue. You know, and they were speaking out that tongue, and it connected to all of us in certain ways.
Absolutely.
Dr. Augustine, when did you get deeply entrenched into the your faith and I guess the ministry? When what was that? When and what was that like?
Okay. Well, so I was DJing, you know, still working in radio, doing the music thing. And then I was pretty much, so my people weren't in my life, like family wise. So it was pretty much the priest at my neighborhood church, St. Peter Claver, Father Michael, who was like a father figure kind of thing. That's why, even though I grew up around knuckleheads, murderers, drug dealers, killers, you know, those are my friends in the area. They're all dead, unfortunately. But I was the one with the moral compass, for lack of better words. That's why I didn't do it. I was around it, but I didn't do it. You know how that is. And then in New Orleans, there's an order of Black nuns known as the Sisters of the Holy Family, right? And their foundress, and this is just an educational moment. November is Black Catholic History Month, right? In the church, right? And Venerable Henriette DeLille, their foundress, who's from my neighborhood in Tremé, she's on her way to becoming the first African-American Catholic saint in the history of the church, right? So it's just stuff that we fight in New Orleans in different ways, you know, about our history and our faith and our connection. Well, anyway, one day, my mama, Sister Eva, asked, and Father Mike asked me to chaperone a lock-in, right? These high school kids, they didn't have enough male chaperones. Like, I ain't working Friday, I'll come. And when I came there, I realized a lot of those young people were my relatives of my partners that I had growing up, right? And then we had a great time. Like, man, this is cool, you know. And so I started trying to figure out a way to get rides from. I didn't have a car at the time, from uptown when I was at school to downtown, so I could be there for Wednesday night youth group. And then one thing led to another, and Mike offered me the job if I graduated. So I changed my major from mass communication to sociology, started working on my master's. But brother, you asked that question when. You know, that's when I felt, you know, this is what I'm called to do. This is what I want to give my time to. But after Hurricane Katrina, I feel is when I got my purpose. You know, because I was investing my time in my community, I wanted to build back my community, especially with the people I lost. No, I didn't even realize I was so shown. So this is my New Orleans tattoo, but in the fleur de lis is the initials of the girl I lost, my girl. I lost her in the storm.
Oh man.
You know, but that's why I was so focused. So long story short, my truck was stolen the Wednesday from U Group before Katrina, so I had no way out. She lived in the Ward 9, I lived in the 6th Ward, right? A normal 10-minute ride would have been 3.5 hours that Sunday before, the day before the Katrina hit. My partners came and got me. The 504 area code wasn't working, so I couldn't call her, right? But her cousin who lived down the street from me said they left, but the day was her mom and kids, not her. So, I mean, that's what happened with that. But I keep this on the back of my phone, and I don't know if it's showing right, but it says baptized when the levees broke, right? And so for me,
You're gonna make me cry.
I have my ministry going on, but I feel God called me to my purpose, which is to fight for my city, and I'm still fighting in various ways by even talking about it, right? After that storm. And so it's a reality, and it's always been for me working for the underdogs, like we say, the people on the peripheries, people on the margins, whether it's the youth from my neighborhood, the people in the prisons, you know, anybody that's forgotten. I believe that's where Christ is most, right? For me, you know, and that's where I feel that, you know, God is calling. So tomorrow, you know, we're recording this October 30th. Tomorrow, I'm working at a school tomorrow, volunteering with their candy giveaway kind of thing, you know, in Southeast DC. I tell you the name of the school, but I can't think of it right now. I'm drawing a blank. I just have the directions in my GPS because I'm still learning the area. But it's that kind of stuff, you know. And it's not that I'm some super saint, trust and believe. You know, but this is to me what faith, what hip hop, what all these things come together. You know, I don't think they're different. You know, these are not just different silos. These are all the essence of who I am. And those that I work with, they get it. and they live it out as well. Hence, my cousin D1, he's putting hip hop in a way to make a message to create a better world. And I think all these people do that. You know, like I said, the greats, Public Enemy did that. NWA did that. In their unique way, right? And I mean, just everybody did that because they're speaking for those that don't have the ability to speak for themselves, and that's what true faith should be about too, and empowering them to do the same in their own ways.
Katrina was such a huge event, and it was a wake-up call for a lot of people, I feel. So and for me it was like, I was so angry at the way the citizens of New Orleans were treated. And by faith, at the time I was not even working. And I lied to you not, I had $20 in my pocket. And I decided I'm gonna create a fundraiser. Now in my head, I'm thinking local artists because that's how I started, whatever. But I had not realized my status kind of raised a little, so I had better contacts. And a lot of times, and Samori and Brian can attest to this, I put a call out. Hey, anybody interested in doing this? And people hit me up, and I put it together. Well, the people that hit me up, I was like, oh, it was Immortal Technique, Just Thighs, Wise Intelligent. I was like this, oh, I might need more money. But no, they really stepped up. And I wanted to mention that because a lot of people may not know about that, but because it was so long ago, number one. But people really made that show. It was so beautiful to see. I didn't pay them. They really just came as long as I had a hotel room and a bus. I couldn't even, literally, Greyhound. Some of them said, well, we'll drive, and they came together and I gave them gas money. That's it. Wow. And then they sold stuff there to make money or whatever. And that was like a big, for me, woke me up. I always connected hip hop with doing something, like you said. But for me, that was like a big step up, start doing more. And I continue to do that. So I appreciate that you do that, because for me, that is such a huge connection. And I still do that myself. Next week, I'm going to Seattle for Hip Hop Climate. It's a whole conference with Freeway's going to be there with hip hop. Who would have thought it, right? So I appreciate you. Shout out to those artists that I just mentioned for stepping up. I mean, but it doesn't take a lot. Oh, well, no, let me back up. It takes a lot less than we think to do something. And you'd be surprised what you can accomplish, because I did that with simple donations. If I had to do it again, I don't think I could. We also gave discounts at the door where people could bring canned goods, so we can donate that food for a lot of the people that were brought here. So it worked. Yeah. So you'd be surprised what you can accomplish when you have that faith, determination, a good community around you, connections. So I would encourage people to take that as something, it doesn't have to be huge. It could be as small as, like you're doing. Go pass out candy, right?
Right.
You never know who you're going to meet there. Those kids will remember you. It's really, really important. And I wanted to kind of focus on that a little bit, to put that out there, put that energy out there, whoever's listening, and hopefully that'll keep that energy going. Yeah.
So and that's the thing. That's what's kept hip hop so relevant, even today, with the real artists that are doing it still, is the fact that it's making an impact. It's not just a party thing, although the vibes, it makes you move, but there's a message to the movement, right? The real stuff. And so even we talked about, and my brother Breezy was talking about the I-10 connection when you get down to Houston and come to Mobile, right? It's just that long stretch. And, growing up, even when music, some of those people that hung out at the studio, I didn't know were from Texas, and that was UGK, right? And when we were in, and I shared this with y'all earlier before we started, but when I was at the hotel that I was evacuated in, that right there at the hotel with me was Pimp C's mom, Chad Butler because she was evacuated for Hurricane Rita that happened a couple of weeks after Katrina in Port Arthur, and we just happened to be at the same hotel. I knew her from connecting with her via letters and on the phone, and it was just those in the midst of tragedies, there was still light that came out. And I think that's the thing, hip hop is a source of hope as well, along with our faith, and I think that's the thing when you really, really delve into the power of this genre, that's what comes out of it, the fact that it connects us more than it divides us.
Yes. Oh, you're hitting all my points. I'm a fan.
So you mentioned how early on Manny Fresh saw your spiritual trajectory, as you said that, and you've married hip hop and not gonna say spiritual because hip hop, as you said, has always been spiritual,
It is spiritual, yeah.
Faith. When we talk about, and you talked about a little bit, I wonder if you can expound a little bit more. What does hip hop ministry look like to you?
Well, I don't think it would be labeled as a hip hop ministry. I think true ministry in and of itself is hip hop in and of itself. Why? Because when I talk about the aspects of hip hop, breaking in and of itself, the movement that's there, how are you moving in your community, right? When you talk about beatboxing, the use of your mouth to do certain things and create things that connect to people, how are you speaking along with the beatbox, but also the lyricism that's there? So when I'm in a prison, how am I speaking to these men and women, or especially young men and women, if I'm going to a juvenile detention center, how is what I'm saying resonating with them? True hip hop resonates, right? And then when we talk about even the fashion that's there, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, some days I got to dress in suits. I'm not ordained, so I'm not wearing robes and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? But when I go to certain places, is what I'm sharing or wearing relatable to the people that are there? Whether even if I'm putting on my Indian suit, that is spiritual in of itself. Because when I put it on, I'm not Dr. Ansel Augustine anymore. I'm the medicine man of the nation, and I carry myself because there's, we can go into Indian stuff, and that's a whole nother episode, right? Coded language, the positions that are there, everything was secretive in regards to everything we say. We have a whole language that's indigenous and Creole mixed together. So when you hear the Indians on the street, what we're saying, only we understand because we didn't need the oppressor understanding what we were doing or saying. Everything was coded so we can speak and communicate in those ways. Even the way we hold our sticks, the way we move, what things we do, all that is coded, right? Wow. That's hip hop. You understand what I'm saying? So when I look at ministry in and of itself, being a form of authentic resistance, and I want to get this quote right. Am I a minister that is a chaplain to the kingdom or a prophet to the people? Right? I want to be a prophet to the people. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to be popular and just have cushy jobs and do whatever and have a title to do whatever. I want to make a difference in the lives of people, right? Especially the people that the kingdom doesn't care about. And that's truly, to me, why hip hop is so impactful to me. That's why I can be in a call and Lord, what's the Ice Cube song? Who's gonna shoot or who's the next to shoot? I forget what it is. But anyway, that thing, when it comes on, man, I'll be having church.
Ryan?
Right?
Yeah, I know it. I already know it.
I'll be having church.
Remember they shoot. Yeah.
My favorite hip hop song, more like country rap tunes if I'm going with Pimp C and Bun B, and my New Orleans people will kill me.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay. And it's crazy because the title is so anti-faith based, but that song Murder. Oh my.
They know how I feel about that song. They know how I feel about that song.
Man, I will play that if it comes on, and I will, like catch the Holy Ghost. You know what I'm saying? Going off rapping. You know what I'm saying? But it's like I said, it's an energy that comes with it. Before I go to the gym, if I'm draining, like put on that song, let's go. You know what I'm saying? And then I'll play some Mardi Gras Indian music, and y'all can hear that on your own time. You know what I'm saying? Or some brass band music and all that coded language and all that stuff with my ancestors and my culture comes back to me in those ways. And I feel that, and I think that's the power of hip hop. So, and it moves me in my ministry to do what I need to do to create a more just and equitable society for people. Because that's what hip hop did to me. It spoke for me, and it spoke when I didn't have a voice for myself.
That's amazing.
What, let me ask this question, Dr. Augustine. What's your in the current climate of hip hop now that I guess um will be on the radio or just just out. What is your I guess concern about it, considering that the roots of it while also dabbling in it. Well, not say dabbling, but also practicing and exercising uh spirituality and faith. You know, it's almost kind of like a little war, kind of in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, I got these pictures here. So that's me and D1 at a shoe giveaway he did, and I gave him a Saints jersey with Augustine on the back. That's our last name, right? A repping out there. It's just he's speaking against those ills that are there, and there are ills. For
Hmm.
me, everything, everything, and I had to get this right. You know what I'm saying? Even when I had guns in my face, when I was doing ministry, when I was trying to work with the young people in the community, I almost got carjacked by one of my own kids, youth
Mm,
kids. He when he realized it was me in the car, he took off running a couple of years ago. And I say all that because I know, and I believe this, and this is not me being preachy, but everything is spiritual warfare, and our communities have been under attack. So when this
hmm.
powerful tool known as hip hop came out, 70s, 80s, I want to say late 90s, and all of a sudden 2000s, all of a sudden it became the popular thing and a money making gimmick, and thus
Mm,
it got watered down, gentrified, popularized in a way that right now it's more of a gimmick. You have some artists that are really speaking the truth still. I'm not saying everything, but what's out there and what's promoted is not the hip hop that came out. And I feel, and then add to it, um, yeah, this is not a church thing. So, the drugs we had back in the day was different. These new
hmm.
drugs that these kids are on, making them zombies, doing whatever, and add this crazy music that's out there that's telling them certain things to do, their mind, you know what I'm saying? Their mind effed. I'm just gonna say it like that. I won't say, the
Yeah,
actual word, and
right.
that's why they're out there doing all this zombie type stuff, And so for me, that is spiritual warfare because it's taking our people out of themselves, right?
Mm,
Just like in the 80s, it was more affordable for women not to have the men in the household, in the inner city, more profitable. They can get more
right.
help if the men weren't there and our men were being locked up left and right. They're coming out, and right now the emasculization and all that stuff that's happening, and
Hmm.
that's what's popular now. Um,
Right.
and this is what our young people are being taught, and then add in, like I said, these new drugs. Weed is not the same weed. You know what I'm saying? Everything is laced with something else to make it even more whatever, more potent. But like I said, people are out of their mind right now. And so these things are reaching them in different ways. So that's why when I go to the juvenile justice centers and I'm talking to these young people, they're not on that stuff in there, right? And they're willing to listen more,
Huh.
Whereas if I go to a high school or if I go to a middle school, they sneak that stuff in. You know what I'm saying? And so,
Right.
so they're not ready to listen. And so for me, to answer your question, I think that's the challenge, brother, is how how are we navigating this reality of spiritual warfare that's going on in our communities? You know,
Mm,
because, we are united through hip hop, but yet we're also divided with the new reality of what America is and what's going on in society. People ask me, Doc, we need you back as a youth minister. I don't know if I can work with these kids. I love them, but I don't know if I can work with them, right? You know, so 99 through 2007, I was the youth minister at Peter Claver. I lived in our church after they drained the water out.
yeah.
Father Mike asked me to live and stay in the church because they were breaking into places, taking stuff. And some of that was NOPD too. You can Google that, right?
Mm,
So, I had, sidebar, I had like, Mike, I left my gun in Houston. Can I get a gun? Like, no, no, the Holy Spirit will protect you. Bro, every time I heard that door shake, I was barking like a dog from the balcony of the church, right? Making it echo everywhere, right? So it was just those realities, you know what I'm saying? But when there was power, I had, I would charge my phone and whatever, and in the places that had power, and I'd come back at night, got the church out during the day when it was legal, and I'd just be in there during curfew. But I share
hmm.
all that because many times I'm either singing gospel music in the church or I'm reciting some of the hip hop music that was giving me motivation to keep going. Right? It was a spiritual thing. So I share all that because it's spiritual warfare, and what are we putting in our ears and what are we saying out our mouth? And I think that's the thing, how are we speaking to one another? How are we preaching and teaching to one another? And what's being preached and taught to us, especially these young people, and how are we navigating that as a community?
Powerful, powerful.
Your cousin, man, is ticking off the industry. And all three of us are in agreement. It's just like, Benny Siegel, way he is saying is true. With the arrest of Lil Durk, he talked about again, the dangers of drill music and the effect that it has. Why do you think people are such in a tizzy about the things that he's saying?
Well, here's the thing, and I deal with this, and I used to fight this in New Orleans all the time. We make what is quote unquote accepted and popular we make them our leaders. We make them our inspirations. We make them our, people that designate and dictate our lives. Just because something is popular doesn't make it appropriate, right? Just because something is accepted by the masses doesn't make it authentic, right? Even some of the reasons, there are people that I brought into the culture, the Indian culture, and all they want to do is put on feathers and, get attention on social media, but they don't see this thing as sacred, right? They don't see the sacrifice of our ancestors and elders as something that should be respected. No, screw all that. Give me a microphone. I'm gonna get on stage and sing certain stuff, but you're not in the spaces and places where we're at doing the sacred stuff, whether it's Indian practice during that season, or if, let's say, one of y'all die and y'all are part of the culture, we out there ringing the tambourines every evening until it's your funeral day. And at your funeral, we're out there singing and representing the culture. You understand what I'm saying? I share that because I see a lot of change going on, and I see a lot of things that are there. So yeah, you're gonna tick off people when you try to hold up what's right. If we look at the definition of a prophet is not welcome in their own home. And if you're speaking truth in your own home, if you're speaking truth, you're gonna be well, look at my arm, you're gonna be crucified. You know what I'm saying? In whatever way, shape, or form it is. You understand what I'm saying? And look at the history of prophets in the Bible. Look at the history of prophets in the Quran. Look at the history of prophets in any type of society. The people that call out truth to power, but call out the ills of the people, right? And you're doing it out of love, not to make anybody feel less than. But if I love you enough, I'm gonna tell you you're doing wrong. So I have many young people that don't deal with me anymore because I called out their BS. I called out their family's BS. I'm like, come on, you're hurting yourselves, and I love you enough to tell you. But no, people want to be comforted with a lie rather than be confronted with the truth. And I think that's what my cousin's doing. He's confronting people with the truth. He loves people enough to tell them the truth. And I think that's the problem right now is people don't want to hear the truth. They just want to feel comfortable. Yeah, y'all got me preaching.
I think you'll be surprised. I think you will be surprised, pleasantly surprised. Some of those kids that you don't think are listening, I think it'll come to be. I use my son as an example. He used to think I was this conspiracy theorist and whatever, because I know history and I studied it, and being Mexican, I don't know about the indigenous culture, and him being black. But I always told him, I said, there's black Mexicans. This is before this was, known thing, and that kind of thing. And he just looked at me like, yeah, right. That kind of thing. And he just thought I was making stuff up. And now he thanks me for bringing that to his attention. So now he knows. I said, but it took a minute, So I think you might be pleasantly surprised, and you might hear, and I'm sure you probably already have heard some of those kids telling you that, they're going to thank you.
Yeah, amen. Thank you, my sister.
I always hate, as crazy as it sounds, I always hate like what I feel like are good shows, because they never last longer than you think. Right? They never last longer than you think. We are so appreciative for you coming on again, part some words with us. Please let the people know what you're working on, how can they assist you, and where can they find you?
Well, my social media, I'm on Facebook under Ansel Augustine, but I think that thing was hacked, but my Instagram is Preach, Preach, and the number's 504 for my area code. So Preach 504. And then so that's my Twitter too. My website is www.holyhotboy.info, right? I'm working, I mean, I'm just really getting adjusted to the area, learning what the needs are, and one of the things I did selfishly, for me to have a network here, I joined Mardi Gras crew. There's a Mardi Gras crew here, crew of Pyros, and that's who I'm doing the community service stuff with. So it's a bunch of Louisiana people that live up here. And when I get on Zooms with people at home, they're like, "Damn, Ansel," or Mr. Ansel, depending on who talking to me. You sick? Because I done lost 45 pounds since I moved here. The food different up here, bro. Right?
I'm telling you, man. I grew up, man.
I don't disagree.
Not be able to fit into the shirt, right?
And look, again, I grew up eating crawfish etouffee. I grew up eating, shrimp and all that, man. So I know.
Yeah, right.
I can't find good Mexican food. I agree with you.
Right, right.
Right.
But I as many times, even in this space that I'm in right now, working where I work and doing the work that I do on a national level, sometimes I wonder, Lord, why the hell you got me here? But then at the end of the day, I'm like, well, if you put me here, I'm supposed to be here. And at the end of the day, you're with me here. And so sometimes I'm reminded by that with a song I hear, wherever it may come from, whether it's hip hop or otherwise. And I think that's the power of music, and that's the power of kinship. So just like you and me connected that first day, I like, man, that's my brother. You know what I'm saying? So you shooting me text, I'm shooting you text back. You know what I'm saying? And now Samori and Soyo, yeah, we family now too. We're gonna hang at the Home Depot. You're gonna text
That's
me,
right.
And then we're gonna go out there, right?
Exactly.
We got your back, that's for sure. We got your back.
And so working on is still the work, trying to shine a light in a world that's dark. And that's all my work is, And so there's no specific projects. I'm just trying to get home from Mardi Gras so I can be with the Indians and hit the streets and practice my culture, and that's this year Mardi Gras is March 4th, if anybody wants to come to New Orleans, right? But still just doing that kind of stuff and upholding the culture, upholding the light that we need. And that's it at the end of the day, just trying to do what I feel is called to do. And that's it.
Man, that's great. Well, if y'all want to reach us, you can email us at the Gemix, dmv@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter, the Gemix, Instagram, the Gemix DMV. Of course, please find and like our Facebook group. And of course, you catch us here each and every Saturday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. We're out of here. Peace. And oh, by the way, Mobile has the first Mardi Gras. We out here. Peace.
New Orleans has the best Mardi Gras. Come on.
So, Preach, I got a question